A little over a week ago, the Cleveland Cavaliers went toe-to-toe with the Boston Celtics down the stretch of the fourth quarter. The problem was they were down by double digits for the vast majority of it, despite outscoring Boston by 6 to close the game. This has been a glaring issue for the Cavaliers throughout the entire season, and Richard Jefferson actually pointed this out after a Cleveland run that closed the gap to just under 10 points. He basically said that the Cavaliers were playing great. The problem is that their first half was atrocious, and that this was a theme that he had identified throughout the NBA season. And he is absolutely right. The difference between the first and second half Cleveland Cavaliers is astronomical. And this Boston game exemplified that. In the first half, Cleveland scored 36 points and Boston scored 56. The Cavs were operating at a 20-point deficit to come into the third quarter. It's sure, realistic for a team to be able to come back down 20, but is it realistic for them to do that on a night in, night out basis, especially when it comes to playoff time? The answer to that question is absolutely not. The Cavs have got to crack down on their first half performance before the playoffs start, because if that is going to be the narrative that this Cavs team is struggling with, I would not be surprised to see them be a first-round exit regardless of seeding. So let's talk about the Cavs' first half and what is so different about the second half. So in totality, it's not necessarily a lack of quote-unquote traditional effort. If you look at hustle stats, the Cavs are actually 7th in the league in deflections and 8th in total loose balls dove for, out-of-bound tip passes. They're a top 10 in the league, and top 10 in the league, and they're 13th in the league in shot contests, period. But here is where they truly struggle. They are 25th in the NBA holistically in contested three-point shots. Not to mention, they are not a great three-point shooting team. So now let's expound upon that and talk about the staunch differences in the first half versus the second. So first we're going to, talk about traditional box score numbers. The Cavs in the first half of games are 17th in the league in points per half, 19th in the league in field goal percentage, 24th in three-point shooting percentage, 19th in rebound, despite having two of the best rebounders in the league, and they're an average 15th in box score plus minus as a team. So overall, they're actually, the scoring margin of Cavalier first half games is about half a point positive. The Cavs are winning more first halves than they're losing. The problem is who these halves are coming against. They are winning halves versus losing teams, but versus teams like Boston, they are struggling. But the narrative flips in the second half. Traditional box score numbers, they're first in the league in second half scoring, second in field goal percentage, fourth in three-point shooting percentage, 10th in rebounding, and third in box score plus minus. They literally turn into Oklahoma City in the second half of all of these games. The margin on average between each of these statistical categories is 14 placement points, meaning they are doing better than 14 NBA teams between the first and second half of these games. And they're already sitting at an average team in the half. So it's just baffling to me how this happens. And to me, it points to one of two things. Number one, it could be it's the regular season and it's hard to get up for games. But I combat that point/question with, we don't see other teams struggle with this. Boston, Oklahoma City, San Antonio don't typically have a consistent issue in the first half. The second thing that I point to, and this is more realistic, this is a coaching thing. Can Kenny Atkinson, the head coach of the Cavaliers, figure out how to motivate this Cavs team to perform at a high level. So then you start asking the questions, well, where exactly do they need to get better at? Well, let's get into some opponent statistics before we close out with some advanced ones. Let's talk about the fact in the first half, the Cavs are 29th in opponent three-point shooting percentage. In the league, they're the second worst team at defending the three in the first half. They're 20th in allowing opponent rebounds, 20th in allowing opponent assists. They're 18th in opponent steals, meaning they're giving up sloppy turnovers, and they're 27th holistically in opponent three-pointers made. So they are giving up an unbelievable, this is for a good team. Like, there are bad teams like the Nets, they give up open threes. Well, they're the rebuilding, developing Nets. This is supposed to be an Eastern Conference contender. And they are one of the worst teams in the first half on defense, giving up the 27th most threes in the league. They're giving up the third most threes in the first half against opponents. They're allowing opponents to shoot the second best field goal percentage from three in the first half. Now let's talk about the second half. In the second half, they're actually not statistically that much better, but in terms of where they are sitting in placements of the first half, it's worlds improvement. They're 14th in the league in opponent three-point shooting percentage in the second half, 7th in opponents' rebounds, 14th in opponents' assists, 12th in opponents' three-pointers made, and they're 23rd in opponents' steals. So what do these statistics tell me? Well, they start to clamp down on defending the three. They use their bodies and box out better. They stop giving up as many open looks. And then the 23rd in opponent steals, that means that teams are getting more steals in the second half than they are in the first. It's because they're having to sell out offensively to make these grandiose comebacks. So that is a major concern for me. They're performing much better in these defensive categories, but they're being sloppier with the basketball because they kind of have to. They have to roll the dice offensively to score a barrage of points to come back down from these deficits that I'm going to get into in just a little bit. As a matter of fact, let's hop into some of these examples. I've already talked about Boston getting outscored by 20 in the first half and having to try to come back from that. They could not. They lost by 11 points. In the beginning of March, they played Brooklyn, one of the worst teams not only in the NBA, but in NBA history. And the Nets outscored them 52-46. Now, granted, there was no Donovan Mitchell, but everybody else played, so there's no excuse, in my opinion, for this kind of thing to happen with the Nets actively trying to lose games. But more importantly, let's talk about the playoff teams. They played Oklahoma City. They were outscored by 9, and they got outshot from 3, 21 three-pointers made for OKC to just 13 from Cleveland. They played OKC again in January. They got outscored by 15 points in the first half. Then, of course, they play Eastern Conference teams like Detroit. They had a second quarter versus Detroit in January where they allowed Detroit to score 47 second quarter points. The list can go on and on. I have a plethora of games here. I've got over 20 games here where either they were going up against a contender and got blown out in the first half, or they went up against a rebuilding, tanking team and either got outscored or the game was relatively close. In these games that I have written down, they're 4-16 in them. A horrific number, and it's all based off of their performance in the first half. So let's talk about that with the advanced numbers. In the first half of games, the Cavs are 16th in offensive rating, which you're thinking, that's not bad. Well, it's not bad, but it's not good. And this Cavs team is supposed to be a good Eastern Conference contender. They're 13th in defensive rating, 14th in net rating, but they're 25th in rebound percentage, 15th in true shooting percentage, and 20th in pace. So they play slow, they're not rebounding the basketball, and I've already talked about how they cannot defend the three. But my God, I mean, maybe this is like the old 1950s and 60s NBA, and they just go into the locker room and rip some cigarettes, and they come out somehow magically rejuvenated for the second half. Because listen to these statistics. They are second in offensive rating in the second half of basketball games, 12th in defensive rating, second in net rating, 7th in rebound percentage, 3rd in true shooting percentage, and 8th in pace. That is an average increase in differential of 11 in advanced statistics. That's like unheard of. I know a lot of people are not advanced stats experts, but you don't. This is a true night and day scenario when talking about a basketball team. Like, that's usually something that's more metaphorical or point of reference type thing, but this is something that's going on throughout the entirety of a season. I'm quite astonished that the Cavs have yet to figure this out and repair this. As a matter of fact, while I'm recording this, I'm watching them play the rebuilding Bucks, where Giannis has not been playing hardly at all throughout the latter part of the season, and they just only outscored the Bucks by 1 point in the first half. It's unbelievable. But, I guarantee you in this second half, as long as everybody's healthy, I'm not going to see it before the end of this recording, but I can almost guarantee you that they're going to win this game, because they're going to come out in the second half and blow the doors off Milwaukee. So that being said, let me know what you think of this Cavaliers team. Are they a team of destiny, quite frankly, in the second half, kind of like the Pacers were last year? Or is this just a glaring problem that won't be solved right now? Because to solve these problems, it seems that one of two things has to happen. You have to reconstruct your roster, or you have to reconstruct your coaching staff. And one of the other is not going to happen in the middle of the season. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is one of my favorite videos that I've done. I love diving into the opponent statistics and advanced statistics. So let me know if you want to see more of those videos. Thank you guys again for watching, and we'll see you next time.